made my day, Andrew.
Hello, fellow risk takers, and welcome to my worst investment ever. Stories of loss to keep you winning. In our community, we know that to win in investing, you must take risk, but to win big, you've got to reduce it. This episode is sponsored by A Stotts Academy online course, How to Start Building Your Wealth Investing in the Stock Market. I wrote this course for those who want to go from feeling frustrated, intimidated, or overwhelmed by the stock market to become confident and in control of their financial future. Go to myworstinvestmentever.com/deals to claim your discount now. Fellow risk takers, this is your worst podcast host, Andrew Stotts, and I'm here with featured guest, Rachel Beck. Rachel, are you ready to rock?
I'm ready to rock and roll, and I've been smiling the whole time, Andrew. Thank you for having me.
Can't wait. So, let me tell the audience a bit about you. Rachel is the author of Finding Your Way When Life Changes Your Plans, a memoir of adoption, loss of motherhood, and remembering home. She's living in Des Moines, Iowa, and is a rising voice in the movement of women's storytelling. Her story is rooted in a cross cultural adoptive family love story unlike any other. Lifted by wings, strengthened through struggle, Rachel's story flies in the face of society's expectations for women to look a certain way and slip comfortably into the American dream. Rachel, take a moment and fill in further tidbits about your life and maybe tell us a little bit more about the story and your book.
Yeah, Andrew, it's really, my story is very interesting. It's very complicated. It begins in a remote village in India, a very small area, India, in the state of Tamil Nadu in southern India. My biological mom died 2 days after giving birth. There's a man, we're not sure if he was his father or not, tried to take care of me. I was extremely sick, so he brought me over to the founder of an orphanage. And I stayed in her home. She had other children in there, and she took care of me until I was adopted. The orphanage is still there today, it's, and I go there. When I go to India, I stay there. And part of the proceeds of the book are going back to the orphanage. It is it's my destiny, right?
Mm.
It's I've been trying to find my way. I'm in my mid 40s and I'm just finding my way right now. It's a story of resilience. It's a story of never giving up. It's a story of never quitting. It's a story of never accepting what people expect us to be and to be who we want to be, which you and I both know that applies to many different areas in life. I've learned to let go of expectations. I've learned to let go of what people think, because we can't control what people think of us. We can only just be us. It's a story of survival. I've almost died 3 times in my life, so I don't take anything for granted. I get up and I'm grateful every single day.
Hmm.
That's what it comes. It's the story. I've had battled a disease for 20 years. I battled endometriosis. I've lost a child through pregnancy. I've had a failed adoption where I met a baby girl and that fell apart. And that door of motherhood, I closed many years back. I also 3 years ago had to have a hysterectomy due to a medical reasons. So it's about reinventing yourself,
Mm.
right? I had to reinvent myself as a woman all over again. And I've had to go through identity all over again. It is not easy being a Jewish Indian woman in
Mm.
America. I face a tremendous amount of racism. I deal with anti-Semitism. So it's putting that like protective shield around me and saying, okay, you can get through this.
Wow, that's intense. You know what you went through. It's interesting. I had shivers going down my spine as you were talking. One of the things that we have in somewhat in common is that there was a place that I lived when I was young, when my life fell apart, and it was not an orphanage, but it was a place for young kids. It was a rehabilitation place called New Directions, and it was also started by a woman named Nikki Babbitt. She started it about almost 40 years ago. She passed away a long time ago, but that place is still there. And that is where I got sobriety. I got clean, and got off of drugs. And I stayed there for 7 months. And my counselor, meaning I left there in 1983, my counselor at that time is now the director of that program. So he's been there the whole time. He's actually been a podcast guest. And, you know, it's that connection that I made through there. I mean, the I like to say that I got a chance to reboot like a computer, and that place gave me the chance to reboot. And the visionary Nikki, who started it, really gave me that chance. I took that chance just as you did with the opportunity that came. But I think it's a tribute to, and for the listeners out there, if you have a somewhat stable situation, or you've overcome challenges, working with young people who are struggling, who are struggling, whether it's with drugs, whether it's with family, whether it's with relationships, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, physical challenges, devoting just a little bit of time to those people can change the whole damn world, because you touch one person, and when you touch one person and you change the world, you change their world, they change the world into a better place. So really appreciate, your story, what you went through, and where you are now. So I'm glad to have you on the show.
Thank you. No, I feel really, Andrew was adopted by a beautiful family. I was with them from 11 months on forward. When I go back to India, I had, like you were talking about, two different homes, right? So I'm Indian American. I'm an American citizen. When I went back to India for the first time in 2013, I like my whole soul came alive. And I don't even know how better way to describe that. But I had dreamed of going back to India my whole life, and it's where I wanted to be. And so every time I go there, I have that experience.
Mm,
And you were talking about the woman who founded your place. So the woman who founded this orphanage, and she has saved, and she's passed away too, hundreds and hundreds of children's lives. So her ashes were flown back there, and there's a tomb, on the orphanage, and they have a yearly event where they honor her. So I got to go there, and it was really powerful. I
mm,
sat, cried, and I thanked her for saving my life.
yep. So it's a great lesson for all the listeners. Just give a little bit of time. Just give a little bit of time. I remember in 1998, we had the Asian crisis. I'd almost lost everything. I lost my job. I almost lost our coffee business. And Dale, myself, my business partner, Dale, for the coffee business, had to live in the factory in a little room on the outskirts of Bangkok, in a strange country we had moved to, with very little resources, very little relationships there. And we were all alone. And then I lost my sister to cancer, and I went
Oh,
into a depression. And what I did to get out of that depression is I went to a place called the Child Protection Foundation in Bangkok, and I just started playing with the kids. And I just decided I'm not going to really do anything. I'm not going to teach English or anything. I'm just going to come here and play with these kids, and to see the tragedy in these kids' lives, and yet the spirit of fun and positive energy and just energy in general really lifted me up to tell me, just that little bit of time that I spent with them got them to smile. And it certainly got me to, look at my life in a different light. So I challenge all the listeners. This is a great, reminder for everybody to how can you touch a young person's life who is struggling? It may just be an hour of your time. It may be a month. It may be a year, but that little bit of time can change the world.
it's planting that seed, right? You're planting that seed. This is something that Andrew, I don't know if you know this, for 10 years I ran a photography business and I worked all over. And I would also, one of the things I loved about doing that is I was able to volunteer with charities to help them, because obviously they needed the funding, but they couldn't get the money. We were talking about money
Yeah.
for PR and marketing because they're non for profits. So that was one of the things I decided I wanted to do, was to help them. And to see those faces and to tell this, I have, like, I've walked into some places through my photography most people would never step foot in,
Mm,
and I've had somebody with me for my protection. It's to tell the stories of what's really going on in this world. I don't believe in sugarcoating anything.
Yep.
I really don't.
Fantastic. Well, now it's time to share your worst investment ever. And since no one ever goes into their worst investment thinking it will be, tell us a bit about the circumstances leading up to it, and then tell us your story.
Andrew, it really comes down to this. I would say the biggest mistakes I've made when it comes to investing is relationships. Comes whether it's a friendship I've made or a business relationship that I've lined in, or I put my faith into some company and then they didn't deliver. That is what I say would be the worst things. And I've learned from every experience. And then we all make mistakes, we all make bad investments, but I learned from something.
Mm.
Right. So I learned whether or not, if I was working and undervalued myself, like on a project that I charged, that okay, I need to like make sure I do this right the next time. If I learned something from a building, I'd put a lot of faith into a company. I could say there's two companies,
Mm.
and one of them really failed me miserably, really, really miserably. So I learned from that lesson to not put in, when it comes to business or a company, that if that they're saying we're going to deliver the sun, moon, and stars, that might not necessarily be true.
And
So that was
if you take that particular case, let's say, and you look at it in hindsight, you see, but at the time you stepped into it, what was it that like attracted you in, or what was it that got you into that where you now realize, oh, that was a mistake?
my heart. It was an emotionally attached project. So now and everything I do is for my heart. But now what I would say when it comes more to business, I'm going to lead cognitively first and then let my heart go. And let my heart guide. And that's why I was saying it comes down to relationships. That's exactly why. So now, like, I know I'm an empath, so I feel everything. Like, even our first conversation, I knew you're a fantastic person, and I wanted to do this with you.
Mhm.
So I've learned that. I've learned I'm very big on, when it comes to business, like what you say, like your word is your bond. Like, I told you 4 o'clock today, I will be here at 4 o'clock today. So that's another part of investing, right?
Yep.
You're not investing our time. Are you showing up? Are you investing in etiquette? Are you conducting yourself in the best way? These are all things that people can invest in right now in the middle of
Mm.
this pandemic. That's really, really important.
Yep. So if you would summarize for the person out there who is maybe more emotional, or they don't know that much about business and they're jumping in with all this excitement, how would you summarize the lessons you've learned from these mistakes?
Look for the lessons. Look for the red flags. If
Mm.
something is too good to be true, then that's probably your answer right there. If something, if it looks like sun, moon, stars, it's probably not.
Yep.
So I've learned to keep my eyes open more. I've learned, and I have to say this, Andrew, I have 4 incredible role models in my life who ran very successful businesses, made it, and giving back to this world. So they've taught me everything I need to know.
Mm.
I think it's important for people to ask for help. I think the ego gets in the way of that for people. I
Right.
have people I can reach out to for help, and I think that's crucial. We all need help, and we all definitely need help during this pandemic. We are all doing this without that social interaction, without that board meeting.
Mm.
And we're grateful we have technology, don't get me wrong, but it's not the same as you and I sitting down having a cup of coffee right now in your
Yeah.
coffee shop. So take the time. Are you investing in relationships right now? I tell my network this all the time. Whenever, are you taking the time to build that relationship? Right
Mm.
now, I'm investing in building the relationships, and I'm teaching my network, build the relationships. You have no excuse not to do that. When I was 18 years old, I was taught it's not what you know in business, it's who you know in business. And
Yeah.
that's what I was taught.
Yep.
You can have the foundation, we can read the books, we can do everything. But you know what, Andrew, I learned something every single day. I never stop myself from learning. I'm in a constant state. I'm very thirsty for knowledge. So I'm in this constant state of soaking it. I go to the experts in the field. I've been introducing them to people on my network. Hey, you're going to come on. Hey, meet Andrew. This is the advice he's going to give you.
Yep.
Build the relationships, invest in the relationship.
Perfect. So here's a few things that I take away from your story, and that is I would like to title my little discussion here, The Intangibles of Business. A lot of times we look at the tangibles, the numbers and all that. But what you're talking about is that there's certain intangibles in business. And the first one that you talked about was the idea of your emotion. And I would say emotion, intuition. On the one hand, we need now remember that intuition is different from emotion. Intuition is that moment that you have that fleeting feeling. This is right, this is wrong. So first of all, what I've learned from this podcast is that we must try to be in tune and pick up the signal from our intuition. But our intuition is different from our feeling. Now, our feeling goes longer, deeper, stronger. But the point is that in business, we have to think of, to some extent, logic over emotion. Sometimes we have to put the emotion down and focus on the logic of it. The second thing that I think about that I always say is an intangible in business that we don't learn in school, and that is trust. Business is based upon trust. We sign contracts and all that, but that's really to say we agree that this is what we're going to do for each other. And, it's not only a relationship on trust, by that contract, it's a relationship of trust and money that, hey, you're going to pay me for doing this, and you owe me this, and you're going to pay me as soon as, you hit this deadline. And, there's so much trust involved. And in fact, a lot of this COVID situation and the shutdown of economies really pushed that trust to a limit. It really pushed it very, very hard. So trust is another thing that I think is critical. And the last lesson for me is the idea of having the team around you, the mentors or the people around you. For me, I have a small group that I call my core four. And there's four core people in that, including me. So there's four of us. And those are my kind of brain trust, the people that I've basically been with and working with and friendships with for 20 to 40 years. And so that's my core four. And maybe I'll just share my goal for this year. This year for 2020, my goals are to focus, to deepen, and to attract. And what I mean by focus is my highest priorities are clear and I work on them daily. What I mean by deepen, it means I bring value, I bring more value to my efforts and to my relationships. And so when it comes to attractive, I say I attract good things and good people. So I developed like a mantra every year, and then I try to speak that out. And so I just share that. But the one thing I would say is that I want to increase the time that I spend with the core four. What I'm saying is double it per week. That means more time on the phone with them, more time listening to them, more times getting together. And then my other thing about deepen is I want to bring one new person per month into my inner circle. And that's my challenge for this year. And that's not easy because it is based upon trust and all that. But this just thought it would be a good thing to share. So anything that you would add to what I take away from your story?
Yeah, I would say the biggest lesson, Andrew, it's really crucial right now is for people to be professional. I think it's really, really crucial. I think that you have to even put that step, you have to step into it almost even more
Yep.
because it's how everything's going to flow. But if you're not, just because we're in a virtual world right now, it doesn't mean everything else goes away. And that is something that I think is crucial for people to understand.
Mm,
Here's a perfect example. You said, be here at 4. I'm here at like it's a professional thing to do. Why? Because it's a matter of respect. I respect your time. You respect mine. You're a wonderful communicator. Let me say that first and foremost. You're wonderful at communication. And that's a skill that I deeply, deeply value in people is communication. So this is not the time to stop being professional.
mm,
It's
great.
not the time to slack off on being professional either. And That's the truth, Andrew. You know it, and I know it. Like,
Yeah. Well, you know, it's a time that I would say to prove yourself as someone who is reliable during the time of turmoil. So here's your chance. Sometimes you're not going to have money. Sometimes you're not going to be able to pay that bill. Sometimes you're not getting the customers. If you honestly deal with the people around you and say, this is my current situation, I'm not going to run away, but I can't pay this right now, but I'm working on it, and you will eventually get it. That type of communication is the type of professional communication that builds lasting relationships.
and
Lasting.
coffee.
And coffee.
And coffee.
Absolutely.
Relationships over a cup of coffee. Absolutely.
Exactly. Well, I had my morning espresso, so I have a lot of energy today. So, next question. Based on what you learned from this story and what you continue to learn in your life, what one action would you recommend our listeners take to avoid suffering the same fate?
Do the research. Do the research and do more research. I very much invest time into researching. Do it and then do it more. I think that is really, really important.
It's interesting because I told you before the show, and the audience knows that when I started this show, I asked people in my network if they'd share a story, and I got 500 stories sent to me, written stories. And being an analyst, I decided I'd group them into different categories and analyze them. And I came up with 6 common mistakes that people make. And the number one most common mistake is people fail to do their research. So, Rachel's giving us a great reminder that it's critical in business and in life before you take that step that you do the research. Last question. What's your number one goal for the next 12 months?
My goal, Andrew, is to keep lifting people up. That's my goal. I made this decision in March when this pandemic started that that's what I was going to do. Is to shine a light on people in my network, to tell their stories, to give them that chance, to give them the platform to get out there to do it. So that's my goal, and I want to continue to do that.
Let's all keep lifting people up. Listeners, there you have it. Another story of loss to keep you winning. Remember to go to myworstinvestmentever.com/deals to claim your discount now for my How to Start Building Your Wealth Investing in the Stock Market course. As we conclude, Rachel, I want to thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for
And
having.
yeah, and on behalf of A Stotts Academy, I hereby award you alumni status for turning your
Me.
worst investment ever into your best teaching moment. Do you have any parting words for the audience?
Can't wait to have some coffee.
Oh, yeah, it's coming. All right. And that's a wrap on another great story to help us create, grow, and protect our wealth. Fellow risk takers, this is your worst podcast host, Andrew Stott, saying, I'll see you on the upside.